Okay, we are here today to put a hydrant extension on and explain how it is done. First off, we are going to put a hydrant picker onto the hydrant top. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take off all these bolts that are on the flange. Now that we have all the bolts off on the bottom, we're gonna basically try to open it up and it will spin the hydrant off of the spindle. As you can see, it's starting to lift. You may need another hand to hold the hydrant straight. Okay, now that we have unspun it and we can see the bottom all the way off, we're going to lift that hydrant completely off. Try to do it as straight as possible so that you don't cause any kinks in the rod inside. And then just hold that in the air so that it doesn't get dirty on the bottom. Now that we have the hydrant off, we are going to pull the top pin on this. It is very important that you do not drop any of that down inside, or that we have to go to the store to get new parts. So now we're going to pull the pins very carefully. I usually use pliers so that we can hold on to everything. And then we're going to pull the main pin out very carefully. Now we can pull this rod out. We're going to set it aside somewhere where we're not going to get it dirty. Now that we have that other pin pulled out, we're going to put this rod in, and this is a 3-foot extension. Then we're going to put the cotter pin and the pin back in its place. Again, being very careful not to drop anything down inside the barrel of the hydrant. Okay, now once we have that one done, we're going to put the next sleeve on top. So now that we have the extension coupling on, we're going to put the next pin in. Again, being very careful not to drop it down into the barrel of the hydrant. Now that we have the extension on, we're going to put the top rod back in. We're going to put the barrel extension on. And one of the key factors in this is to make sure the gasket is seated in place correctly. Now once we have the barrel sleeve on, we're going to put the clam flanges on the bottom and bolt them up. Now one key important thing about putting these bolts on, or the bolts that go on to the bottom of the hydrant, is to make sure that you do not over torque them. Those clam couplings will bust if you over tighten them. So we just want about hand tight, and that's good. Now that we have the bolts done up on the bottom and they're all good and tight, but not too tight, we make sure that we have a gasket in place so that when it gets turned on, it doesn't leak. And now we're gonna set the hydrant back on to the rod, and we're gonna slowly guide it in and make sure that the threads line up. Well, up a little, up a little. Good. And then we're just gonna start to spin the hydrant on. And once we got it seated on the threads, we're gonna take the picker off and start to basically close the hydrant down again. Now that we're close to having it down, we're gonna orientate the hydrant to where we want it to be, and then use the hydrant wrench to do the final spin down. Now that we have it pushed down all the way, we're going to put the flanges back on and the bolts back into it. And again, we are going to make sure that we do not over tighten the bolts, because if they do, it will bust the breakaway flange. Now that we have the flanges bolted up, everything's solid in place, the very final step to doing a hydrant extension install is when we pulled the hydrant off, it leaked out all the oil that sits into the stem and the threads. So there's a little port in the top that we're going to undo with an Allen wrench and fill it up with oil. The oil is provided in the kit, and we're going to fill it all the way till it fills up completely. Till it starts to pour out, then we're going to put the little cap back in, and we're done.